Kuybyshev, January 25, 1991. You are watching a Sberbank cashier sort 50 ruble notes into a confiscation pile. The woman across the counter saved them for 8 years. The state issued them to her. The state will incinerate them tomorrow. Her son is 17 and standing beside her with a calculator. They are watching 11,400 rubles become paper. That was 4 years of her wages at the ball-bearing plant. The Zhiguli sedan and the dacha plot she had walked through with him in November. Gone in the time it took the cashier to count 10 stacks. Lyudmila Vasilyeva did everything right. She saved through the state bank in the denominations the state gave her. She never speculated. She never traded at the black market rate. The reason her savings vanished in 72 hours is not what most people assume. And by the end of this, you will see exactly which 3 assets survive that same decree, and why the system selected hers for confiscation. By December 1990, the Soviet Union had printed itself into a corner. Here is the first thing most people get wrong about the Soviet collapse. The hyperinflation was not chaos. It was arithmetic. The Gosbank, the Soviet state bank, had been printing money faster than goods appeared on shelves. The published record is precise. Between 1985 and 1990, monetary incomes of Soviet citizens grew by 56%. Monetary savings grew by 72%. The excess money supply, what economists called the monetary overhang, grew by 97%. 3 pieces mattered. First, the printing rate. By 1990, the Gosbank presses were running at full capacity around the clock. Annual ruble emission had risen several-fold from the mid-1980s. The money supply grew, the factories did not. Second, the price gap. State bread cost 20 kopecks, a price frozen since the 1961 currency reform. Black market bread had drifted into the multi-ruble range by January 1991. Tens to hundreds of times the official price. That gap was not speculation. It was the real cost of getting bread when the state shops were empty. Third, the cooperative sector. Small businesses that operated outside the state planning system. They grew from under 2% of the economy in 1988 to roughly 6% by the end of 1990. They accepted rubles. But, crucially, they also operated under a different set of rules. Soviet citizens held more rubles than there were goods to buy at state prices. The monetary overhang was not a liquidity crisis. It was a wealth illusion, the kind that ends in 72 hours when the state decides to act. The question was not whether the ruble would collapse. It was which instruments would survive the collapse and which the state would destroy first. The Pavlov decree did not target people. It targeted paper. January 22, 1991. President Mikhail Gorbachev signs Presidential Decree UP 1329. The full title is Bureaucratic, on discontinuing the acceptance of banknotes of 50 and 100 rubles of the 1961 model of the State Bank of the USSR and limiting the withdrawal of cash from citizens' deposits. But the operative content lists 2 numbers, 50 and 100. The denomination, not the person holding it, not the amount saved. The bill itself. Here is what that meant in practice. Every 50 and 100 ruble note of the 1961 series became invalid at 1800 hours. 72 hours to exchange them. 1,000 rubles maximum per person. Roughly 1 month's average wage. Beginning January 23rd, monthly Sberbank cash withdrawals were capped at 500 rubles per depositor. January 23rd, opening hours. A Sberbank branch in any Soviet city. Fluorescent lights. Metal sorting trays. A cashier sits at a counting table. She pulls bills from deposit withdrawal slips. 50s go left. Confiscation pile. 100s go left. Confiscation pile. 10s go right. 25s go right. Same depositor. Same savings account. The denomination is the crime. These are the largest bills the bank issued to depositors. The bills people used for major purchases. The bills retirees converted pensions into because carrying smaller denominations meant more trips to the bank. The exact instruments retail savers had been steered toward, now selected for confiscation. The state's official position, broadcast by Pavlov in the hours after the decree. The reform was directed at speculative capital and shadow economy holdings. Ordinary citizens, the message said, had nothing to fear. Opposition voices in the Supreme Soviet, Kospulatov among them, called the immorality of the decree a final blow to whatever confidence remained in the central government. Here are the numbers the published record actually shows. The government had targeted 30 billion rubles of confiscation. It withdrew 14 billion. Tens of thousands of households watched savings amassed over decades, 15 to 30,000 rubles for some pensioner accounts, vanish overnight. The shortfall against target did not protect savers. It only showed how much of the system's cash had already migrated outside Sberbank channels before the decree fell. By January 26th, every 50 and 100 ruble note of the 1961 series was sitting in Sberbank vaults, sorted by denomination, awaiting destruction. Lyudmila reached the cashier window at 14:22 on January 24th. She set her canvas bag on the marble counter. The weight alone told the story. 124 times 100 ruble notes, bundled in stacks of 10 with rubber bands she had saved from grocery deliveries. 8 years of Saturday overtime shifts at the 4th GPZ ball-bearing plant. 8 years of walking past the cafeteria on break instead of buying tea. 8 years of telling her son they would fix the dacha roof next summer. The cashier, a woman about Lyudmila's age, wearing the same tired expression every Sberbank employee wore that week, pulled the first stack toward her. She counted 10 notes. She stamped a form. She slid one new 100 ruble note across the counter. Lyudmila's son stood beside her. He was 17. He had brought a pocket calculator, the kind engineering students carried. He pressed buttons while his mother watched the cashier count the second stack. "Mama," he said quietly, "that's the car and half the dacha." The cashier heard him. She kept counting. Lyudmila had known the arithmetic since the radio announcement 3 days earlier. She had known it when she stood in the queue for 90 minutes that morning, behind a retired schoolteacher who cried into a handkerchief the entire time. She had known it when the man in front of her, a diesel mechanic with oil still under his fingernails, turned around and said, "They are stealing our whole lives in there." But hearing her son say it out loud made it real. 12,400 rubles. At the black market rate, 6 rubles to the dollar that week in Kuybyshev, that was $2,000. A Zhiguli sedan cost 18,000 rubles if you knew someone who could get one. A dacha plot near Krasnaya Glinka, the kind with actual soil, not clay, ran 8 to 15,000 depending on size. The cashier finished the 10th stack. She slid the 10th new 100 ruble note across the counter. She pushed the remaining 114 old notes back toward Lyudmila. "Limit reached," she said. "Excess confiscated per the decree." She stamped another form. She wrote 11,400 in the confiscation column. She signed it. She slid it across the counter with the 10 new notes. Lyudmila picked up the bills. They were smaller than the old ones, crisper. The ink smelled fresh. She folded them once and put them in the left pocket of her coat, the pocket without the hole. She left the canvas bag on the counter, empty. She walked out of the Sberbank at 14:35 with 1,000 rubles and a stamped receipt that said balance 0. But that was only the beginning. The Pavlov decree confiscated the bills. Price liberalization destroyed the currency. December 3, 1991. Yeltsin signs RSFSR Presidential Decree number 297 on measures for the liberalization of prices. It takes effect January 2, 1992. State price controls lifted on the vast majority of consumer goods. Overnight. Here is what that looked like in any Russian city. Bread on January 1st cost 20 kopecks a loaf. By February, it was several rubles. By summer of 1992, it was tens of rubles. The published 1992 Consumer Price Index for Russia, 2,508%, 2,500% in a single year. The ruble exchange rate, December 1991, roughly 5.5 rubles per US dollar at the commercial rate. By July 1992, 110 rubles per dollar on the interbank market. a 20-fold devaluation in 7 months. Sberbank deposit rates lag behind by orders of magnitude. The interest paid on a passbook savings account against an inflation rate of 2,508% meant the real return on every ruble in Sberbank was deeply, irrecoverably negative. The pattern was institutional. The Central Bank of Russia printed rubles to cover the budget deficit. The government lifted price controls to reveal the real shortage. The ruble holders, the Sberbank depositors who had survived January 1991 with their 1,000 ruble cap intact, absorbed the loss again. By summer 1992, Lyudmila's remaining 1,000 rubles, the amount she'd been allowed to keep, bought less than her monthly grocery bill had cost in January 1991. While Sberbank savings evaporated, another class was transferring wealth at the exact same time. A different kind of Soviet citizen did not stand in a Sberbank queue in January 1991. Consider the operator profile. The cooperative directors who emerged in the late 1980s after the 1988 law on cooperatives. Many came from theater, academia, foreign trade, technical institutes. The most successful of them shared one thing: a registered cooperative business with a legal channel into hard currency through Neshekonombank, the Soviet Foreign Trade Bank. Vladimir Gusinsky was a representative of this class. Born 1952, Moscow theater director by training. By 1989, he had founded Most Bank, one of the very first private commercial banks in the USSR, initially as a joint venture with the American law firm Arnold & Porter. The Russian word most translates as bridge. The bridge was the operative metaphor, a structure connecting Soviet ruble flows to Western capital channels. This is how operators of his profile worked. First channel: physical inventory, imported equipment, vehicles, machinery, purchased with hard currency from Western suppliers, held in warehouses. The rubles that originally paid for them had already been converted to dollars and locked into metal and diesel engines, outside the reach of any ruble decree. Second channel: dollar-indexed contracts. Construction bids and import-export agreements written so the ruble payment adjusted to the dollar's market rate. The contract repriced itself month by month while the underlying ruble lost value. Third channel: a Neshekonombank hard currency account, permitted under the 1988 law on cooperatives for organizations engaged in foreign trade. Dollars sat in dollar accounts, outside the Sberbank system entirely. January 22, 1991. The Pavlov decree fell. Cooperative cash reserves at this profile sat in small denomination notes used for wage payments and supplier purchases. The 50 and 100 ruble notes that destroyed Lyudmila's savings were not where the cooperative held value. The decree passed without exposure. January 2, 1992. Yeltsin's price liberalization took effect. Imported equipment held in warehouses repriced upward by orders of magnitude in ruble terms, sometimes 40-fold, sometimes more, depending on the asset. The dollar-indexed contracts redenominated automatically. The Neshekonombank dollar accounts continued to hold the same number of dollars. By 1992, Gusinsky had consolidated Most Bank and his other ventures into Most Group, a holding of more than 40 companies. By the mid-1990s, he was on the public list known in Russia as the Seven Bankers. The same window that destroyed Sberbank savers had created the legal infrastructure of post-Soviet private wealth. The lesson is not about one man. It is about a structural fact. While Lyudmila lost 11,400 rubles in 3 days, an entire class of cooperative operators converted hard currency holdings, indexed contracts, and inventory into private banking institutions, using the exact mechanism that destroyed her savings. The Soviet system in 1990 operated 2 parallel wealth channels. A cooperative director walked into a Neshekonombank branch in Moscow. He carried a ledger showing export contracts. He opened a hard currency account. Dollars went in. The account stayed in dollars. A Sberbank depositor walked into a branch across the street. She carried her passbook. She deposited rubles. The passbook showed rubles. Only rubles. No other option existed for her. Same city, same month, 2 systems. Here is what made the asymmetry legal. The law on cooperatives, adopted by the USSR Supreme Soviet on May 26, 1988, explicitly permitted cooperatives engaged in foreign trade to use foreign exchange and to hold hard currency accounts through Bank. Tens of thousands of registered cooperatives could open such accounts. The roughly 140 million Sberbank depositors who held the bulk of household savings had no equivalent right. Private gold ownership had been restricted in the USSR since the 1930s and remained off-limits for the ordinary depositor. The protection worked three ways. First, dollars held at Bank. Whatever happened to the ruble, the dollar account held the same dollars. Second, gold and non-ferrous metals. Cooperatives engaged in legitimate trade or production could hold them as raw material inventory under categories the retail saver could not access. Third, physical inventory. Imported equipment, vehicles, finished goods, purchased with cooperative revenue before price liberalization, repriced after liberalization at the new ruble level, often by orders of magnitude. The mechanics are easiest to see in side-by-side terms. Imagine two Moscow office holders in December 1990. One has a Bank statement showing a hard currency balance. The other has a Sberbank passbook showing the same nominal figure in rubles. 6 months later, the dollar account still holds the same dollars. The ruble passbook is worth a small fraction of its nominal value. The triad, dollars, gold, inventory, preserved purchasing power through the collapse. Sberbank depositors with large denomination notes did not. If you had access to Bank, you survived. If you saved through Sberbank, you were selected for confiscation. The Pavlov decree is not ancient history, it is a template. November 8, 2016. India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi appeared on television at 8 p.m. He announced that 501,000 rupee notes, 86% of currency in circulation, would be invalid at midnight. Citizens had 50 days to exchange them at banks. The Reserve Bank of India called it demonetization. The stated target was black money and corruption. Here is what the forensic record shows. 99% of the invalidated notes were eventually exchanged. No wealth confiscated at the aggregate level. But 3 million small businesses experienced liquidity crisis. Informal sector wage workers, day laborers, street vendors, domestic workers lost 20 to 35% of their cash holdings to exchange fees and delays. Raghuram Rajan, former RBI governor. The informal sector, which relies on cash, faced the biggest disruptions, not the corrupt or the black money holders, who had time and resources to convert. February 2023, Nigeria. The central bank invalidated old naira notes. Original exchange window, 10 days. After riots in Lagos and Kano, extended to 60 days. Informal sector workers lost 15 to 25% to black market exchange fees. The mechanism repeats. Large denomination confiscation, short exchange windows, stated goal, corruption or counterfeiting. Documented outcome, extraction from the cash dependent. Argentina, 2018 to 2023. Peso money supply growth, 75% annually. Inflation 2023, 211%. Parallel dollar market premium over official rate, 120% by October. Dual channel access persists. Retail depositors restricted to peso accounts. Corporations issued dollar-indexed bonds. Exporters accessed hard currency at preferential rates. The record from 1991 tells us clearly what institutions do when the pressure reaches them. These are not predictions. They are forensic records of institutional behavior when monetary systems collapse. Let that sink in. Lyudmila Vasilyeva did not lose her savings because she made a mistake. The Pavlov decree targeted two specific denominations, 50 and 100 ruble notes of the 1961 series, the largest bills the state issued to retail depositors. The bills retirees and savers held disproportionately because every household preference and every cashier's habit had steered them there. Government target, 30 billion rubles withdrawn. Actual confiscation, 14 billion. Gone in 72 hours. Alternative instruments, not targeted. Smaller denominations, too small to matter for accumulated savings. Bank hard currency accounts, protected by cooperative and exporter legal status. Physical gold, restricted from retail ownership since the 1930s. Inventory and real assets, outside the monetary system entirely. Lyudmila held the exact instrument that represented the largest confiscatable pool. Sberbank deposits in large denomination notes. She lost them because the instruments she was allowed to hold were the exact instruments the state selected for confiscation. So far, we've seen the Pavlov decree target large denomination Sberbank notes, price liberalization destroy the remaining ruble value, and the cooperative sector preserve wealth through hard currency and physical asset channels. Here is the protocol the record documents. First, hard currency channel. Bank accounts. Dollar-indexed contracts. Cooperative sector operators with legal access. Tens of thousands of registered cooperatives could hold this instrument. The roughly 140 million Sberbank depositors holding household savings could not. Second, physical inventory channel. Imported equipment, industrial machinery, non-ferrous metals, purchased before liberalization. Repriced after liberalization at the new ruble level, sometimes by orders of magnitude. Third, institutional access asymmetry. The 1988 law on cooperatives created the legal dual channel. One group could hold dollars and conduct foreign trade. One group could not. Same country, same year, different instruments. 3 survival channels: hard currency, physical inventory, institutional access, and 1 confiscation target: Sberbank deposits in 50 and 100 ruble notes. What vanished in 72 hours? 14 billion rubles in large denomination Sberbank notes. Pavlov Decree, January 22 to 25, 1991. No appeal, no compensation, no alternative instrument offered. 3 paths required the same entry ticket: legal cooperative status or foreign trade authorization. The Soviet state created the channels. The Soviet state controlled who could use them. Now, the forensic question. One question remains. The Gosbank printed rubles for savers. The Bank printed dollars for cooperatives. The Ministry of Foreign Trade gave export licenses to specific enterprises. Someone wrote the 1988 law on cooperatives. Someone approved the dual-channel system. The real question is not whether people survived. The real question is whether the mechanism was designed or discovered. If you think you know who designed the dual channel and why, leave a ration book in the comments. Subscribe. This channel examines what governments do when monetary systems collapse, so you can read the institutional record before it reaches you.